Okay, so this is the patch 10.3. We're going through the patch notes first, only specifically for bot lane. So we're only going to be talking about the AD and support changes. I think it's worth talking about the AD changes because your matchups in bot lane will vary. Say, for example, hyper carries come up more than, you know, the supports that buff the hyper carries more, like Lulu will obviously be stronger. So it's worth making sure that the AD carries that we're going to be playing with are still going to be like in sync with the supports that we're going to be playing. Hopefully that makes sense. I won't go through the top or the mid or the jungle changes apart from one thing in regards to Krogs in bot lane. If you are playing on that side of the map, we will have to just briefly talk about that. But that's the only jungle thing that we're going to be talking about here. Also, I've made a big deal about Soraka being nerfed. It's not going to be in 10.3, it's going to be in 10.4. We don't know yet what those changes are going to be yet, but expect them to be quite dramatic. So if Soraka is a champion that you're wanting to play or you enjoy playing her, this could be the last patch that you'll get to play her, maybe. I don't know. We'll see, because they could cut her like they did with Yumi. So we'll go through right now if this works. Apparently it's not working. Apparently this is just an image of the tier list. Well, there we go. Alright. This is the patch note. It says Akali said Ophidios had a minor nerf. I've been personally banning Ophidios in every single game. I would honestly recommend that you do the same as well. But this is a minor nerf. What happened to Ophidios is a minor nerf. He's still going to be very strong and obnoxious when you're playing against him. Other bot lane changes. Ezra received a minor buff. He's got slightly more mana in lane, maybe one extra Q or two in lane because of that. Attack speed growth is quite substantial though, so expect more. If you are staying in with a trade with Ezreal, he's going to be doing a little bit more damage than he would otherwise, so that is something to take a note of as well. Leona change. This is probably the biggest support nerf, I think, coming through in 10.3. So Leona is getting nerfed, much like how Nausus was nerfed in 10.2. If you weren't aware of that Nausus change, they nerfed damage on his Q, his hook, by 10. Here they're doing something very similar to Leona. In fact, it's kind of more, once you get more points in W, it's actually going to be 20 less damage at the end there. And Zenith Blade as well is taking a hit on the base at level 1 as well. So overall about 20-ish damage less per all-in. Overall, I don't feel like it is enough. Obviously, I don't feel like it's going to impact her too much though, just because she provides so much anyway. I think if they wanted to nerf Leona more, I think they should have targeted her ulti in particular. But I mean, she does do a decent amount of damage at least anyway. We'll see how this plays out, but I feel like the amount of CC and utility she gives and roaming potential she gives, she's still a pretty decent pick. Another AD change here as well, Misfortune. They nerfed attack speed. Overall, I don't feel like this is much of a change. She always wants to start do Q harassment in lane. So the attack speed growth here, once again, it will impact her continue trade when she's trading from 100% to 0. She's going to be a little bit less DPS there as well. I'm not sure if this is going to impact her ult damage. I'm pretty I'm like, so I should have probably checked before, but I'm sure that her attack speed is affected by her ulti, but I'm not sure whether that is gonna impact her actual final ult damage outcome. But either way, it's a nerf in terms of continue trading in a prolonged team fight as well. Something to factor in maybe if you are playing with or against the Misfortune. So Sejuani got buffed. Just thought that mentioned that you might see some more Sejuani in your games. So Senna change here is probably the most interesting one of the patch. So they are nerfing the soul generations when you're playing AD carry Senna, but increasing it when you're playing Senna support. That is basically the gist of everything. What I would say is you probably will still see Senna AD carry played in your games, especially for the first week, as people, you know, haven't read the patch notes and stuff like that. I feel like this isn't gonna like stop her from playing AD carry. I feel like she's gonna be good still. I just don't think she's gonna be top tier anymore. So if you are keen at playing Senna, particularly in support, you could definitely pick her up in the AD carry role if your auto field basically, or your secondaries in, you could definitely still play Senna as AD carry. As Senna support though, it is a 5% soul increase buff. It's tempting to. I'll be testing her for sure this patch. I will be interested. She is okay, but she is very prone to getting wrecked by tank engage. That's not going to change here though. But if you can survive the laning phase, you're going to get rewarded a little bit more, which means the snowball aspect is going to probably hit about a minute before than it would do before. Basically, you need about 60 souls is like a really good spot to hit. And if you're going to be hitting that a little bit quicker, then it's obviously a buff. So we'll do some testing. I feel like she has gone up slightly in terms of support. I'll show you guys my overall support to this soon. I just don't, in terms of her being played as AD carry, I still think that's going to be a thing. So still expect Senna AD carries in your games, basically. Are you reading that right? Relic Shield and Steel Shoulder Guards is now even worse than before, right? Basically, if you are... Okay, so some of this might be confusing, especially to non-English natives. So this Mist Wraith drop chance. Minion kills via Spoils of War, Relic Shield and Steel Guardians unique that Senna gets credit for now count as kills by Senna. So basically, if you are playing with an AD carry Senna, and you're playing something like a Leona, if you use your Relic Shield or Steel Guards to hit that cannon minion and execute the cannon minion, Senna will only have a 1% chance of getting a soul rather than it being guaranteed. So even though Senna didn't actually kill the cannon minion, she still gets penalized with only having a 1% chance of getting a soul from that cannon minion. So that's a way to get around that. Like, it could have been a factor maybe that every support that you every AD carry Senna that you play with, it could have been a thing that you could have had to always take a Relic Shield, so to make sure that Senna could always get a soul still, but that they've caught on to that pretty early and realized that, so they're preventing that Relic Shield kind of like exploit potential there. So you don't need to have a Relic Shield if you're playing with a Senna. There's no difference there at all. Slightly confusing, but hopefully I got that point across over there. It is noteworthy. So Set, I've been playing a little bit of support, but I feel like, he's just received another nerf. So I don't know. I wouldn't recommend playing Set support. I didn't add it into my tier list. I felt like there was maybe some potential there, but overall I just don't feel like there's enough there to make it work. So don't do it. Sona E movement speed nerf. Yeah, she was pretty fast. But I felt like particularly in maybe Plat Plus, Sona was a really risky pick anyway, because she's really easy to punish on bad positional mistakes. This is going to be a nerf for gold minus, so between iron and gold, if you're playing Sona, this is a nerf for you. But I mean, Sona's still okay to play until about gold. Basically, once you get to about gold, your positional mistakes will get more and more exploited, to the point where the champion options are getting fewer and fewer and fewer. So you can only get away with so much. So if you are wanting to climb and you're enjoying Sona, up until maybe gold, I would then start looking at other champions. Yeah. Another change as well is Yuumi. So it's... this one's a tricky one to pinpoint, because there's a buff here and a nerf here. So they're buffing her Q. Overall, her damage should go up, especially at the start of a fight. So her Q is getting current health damage on top of that. Also, yeah, the AP ratio is staying the same. So it's hard to call this a buff. It shouldn't be a nerf. They're nerfing their heal, if you haven't seen that already. The later stages of the heal is getting nerfed, but the AP ratio is slightly higher. But I feel like overall it's still a nerf. It's very difficult to place where this one is. She will do very well when harassing a tank at the start of a fight, because obviously tanks have more HP, and if she's doing 8% current health with maximum points in Q onto a tank, that, you know, is a decent chunk of damage. But once you get more into, if the fight drags out on and on, that Q damage is going to become just less and less because of that current health. I don't... It's hard to say that this is a dramatic buff. It's going to increase her win rate a little bit, but I don't feel like there's enough there to say, okay, well, she's now going to be pretty strong. So it's a start. I feel like it could be okay at initiating the fights, but after that, I've got a feeling it's going to be feeling a little bit meh. We'll have to see and test it. This is one of the ones where it's going to be too hard to pinpoint where she exactly is, but yeah, I really need to get a good feeling of this one. The current health is a tricky one to work out as well. If it was maximum health, then yeah, that would be broken. Current health, it's really difficult. I guess what you could do with Yuumi is just try and make sure that when you're throwing out your Q, you're changing the targets like as much as possible. So you're not just focusing that. Say if you're grouped up 5v5 in mid lane, ARAM style, try and Q different targets to get the most out of the current health damage, rather than just focusing down like the one person over and over and trying to knock them out. This is more of like a whole team siege kind of tool here, but yeah, it's really difficult to pinpoint. So earlier on I mentioned Crogs. It's a noteworthy change. So the TLDR on the Crog change here is that Crog's gold is, I think, yeah, it's the Crog gold is going up, but there's massive like XP changes here, more so, and gold changes more so towards the smaller ones. So what would usually happen, say if you're getting 3v2 down and tower dive bot side, at some point during that, the enemy jungler would be stealing your Krogs, but usually they would only steal the big one and then leave the others. So there's more incentive to stay for the medium and the small Krogs. So they could spend more time at that camp, which could give you more time to react. I mean, there's not much in it. The enemy jungler could just still take the big one, but it's a 55 XP down to 37 just for the big one, but the medium one and the small one are worth not only more XP, but they're also worth more gold. So junglers are incentivized more to actually finish the Crog camp rather than just taking the big one. I don't know how much of an impact this is going to have below Diamond. I don't think many jungle mains will care too much about this, but it could impact what happens down bot lane, and how much time a jungler spends doing the enemy Crog camp. So just maybe factor that in a little bit if you are getting tower dove or that the enemy jungler is doing your Krogs. You might be able to save a few seconds just because of this change, because they may want to complete the entire camp. On the flip side though, if the enemy jungler does take your large one, it's more worth for you now to actually clear out the entire camp. Not only because it's now worth more, the medium and the small are worth more, but it also will reset it faster for your jungler as well. So more incentive to kill the mid and small Krog. I think it was worth mentioning because it could have an impact on bot lane, but it shouldn't happen too often though in your games. But yeah, it is worth mentioning. There were one or two bug fix changes here as well. I'm surprised they weren't highlighted more. There's some visual effects here for Nautilus as well. So here is one bug fix I wanted to highlight here. Brom's passive concussive blows stun duration now properly reduces by tenacity. So I didn't even know this was a thing. So apparently Brom's passive wasn't affected by tenacity, which is pretty huge. obviously at the very start of the game, no one's got any tenacity anyway, but you know, it's not uncommon for people to then pick up Merc Treads and have the secondary rune and resolve that increases your tenacity if your summoners are on cooldown and stuff like that. So that's a nerf for Braum for sure. Like this obviously needs to be done, but it's still a nerf for Braum. Very kind of like subtle mention there, but it's a fact to consider. Mid game onwards, and Braum stun nerfed. It will probably impact his win rate by about, I reckon, by about 0.5 to 1% just because of this one change, which obviously shouldn't have been a thing anyway, but it's worth mentioning for sure. I actually rated Braum really highly, but now because of this is a big hit. One other change I wanted to highlight as well, if you have been playing Lux, now her E now properly reveals the brush. I think they did a change, I think it was the last patch, where they made it so her E didn't reveal the brush properly, but now that's been fixed. So her E now grants vision appropriately. That's another noticeable thing as well if you're throwing out your E so you don't face check brushes and things like that. That is a noticeable thing to have out. Although, is that even her? Yeah, it is Lux's E. Okay, good. All right, now going over to the actual tier list itself. Not too much in terms of changes in terms of tier 5 and tier 4. Your usual suspects are there anyway. Tahm Kench, unfortunately, is still garbage. No changes on him. I don't expect him to get any buffs anytime soon, thanks to pro play. Tier 4, once again, I think I like shift. Like AP Shaco has been seeing way less play, so he's gone back down to tier 4. The tier 3 stuff, Thresh, Sona, Brand, Xerath, Morgana, Pyke, Zillion, Rakan, Gragas, Alistair, and Vel'Koz. I think all of those champions are okay until maybe Gold. If you're exceptional on maybe the Thresh, then you could probably push him up to tier 2. I think there are a couple of options there as well. If you're definitely lacking AP on your team, you can do Brand, you can do Xerath there, or you can do Vel'Koz, but I would recommend like avoiding. If I could have maybe put Rakan down to tier 4. I think in hindsight, after looking at this now, I think Rakan has seen very minimal playtime right now. Only really with the Zyra, and even Zyra isn't even particularly good right now. So you could probably nudge the Rakan down slightly, unless your team's got massive amounts of AoE, so they can round them all up and group them up for like an Orianna combo sort of there. I wouldn't really recommend him. But yeah, the AP options are okay there. I think if you had to choose one of those APs, I would say Xerath is probably the best pick there. The longest range, decent base stats. Just obviously he's got low mobility and pretty squishy as well. So if you do get caught out, then you're pretty screwed. But I think he's very suffocating in lane, especially if he doesn't get ganked by the enemy jungler. So yeah, I mean, this is okay to play until I'd say Gold. Then you should probably look up to here. I will highlight straight away that this Yuumi pick, I am not 100% sure about it. She is borderline. She's got like her own separate row here in tier 2. It's pretty borderline between tier 2 and tier 3, depending on how this current health feels like in team fights. I'm barely confident to say she's going to be tier 2. She's probably more going to be tier 3, but I'm not willing to put her into that tier 3 section yet. Current health is just a really weird stat to balance, and I'll update you guys and upload some YouTube games of Yuumi, and you guys can form your own opinion of her. Two things I've added. So Lulu was in tier 3, but since the shield buff, she's become pretty decent. Braum was tier 1. After that bug fix, he's now being pushed into tier 2, because it is a big change for him. Senna, I have moved up from tier 3 to quite reasonably like high tier 2. If you're not playing against a hard engaged support like a Leona or a Blitzcrank or something like that, you will get 3 stacks for sure, especially with an extra 5% now in soul generation. So you will be able to snowball towards that 60 stack plus sooner. Any other notable facts? I mean, Swain's been pretty decent as well. Lux, that slight bug change. Nothing really else too surprising there. I think I've rated Zyra here as the highest, like a overall AP support to play. I personally haven't been playing her much in solo queue games because I haven't been leaning towards much AP lately. But, I mean, she's still got a lot of different CC options. Her base damage is still okay. That you can go to multiple different builds with her as well. So, yeah, generally, I think I'm happy generally with this tier 2, apart from not sure with that Yumi placement there. Blitzcrank is once again a champion that you can play really well until like plat, even low diamond. But I would never recommend first picking Blitzcrank. Make sure you know what the enemy team are playing before you end up blind picking into a Civ or a Leona or something like that. If you do end up into that kind of situation, then definitely look to roam super early. And then up to tier 1. Even with the Nautilus and Leona nerfs coming from Nautilus nerfed last patch and Leona up, I finally like accepted the fact that, you know, Nautilus is good. Like in high elo, he's really good, especially if your AD carry can follow up and has burst. The meta right now is not hyper carry AD carries. Even though Lulu right now is doing pretty decent, it's not the meta. Playing Lulu obviously with a hyper carries or really strong, but not most of the AD carries are leaning towards the Misfortunes. Ezreal got buffed, so Ezreal will probably see some additional playtime as well. So Lulu won't be able to help those. They don't need that much help. Like the Ezreals in particular don't need much help in any phase. It's much better to try and roam off to a mid lane. Soraka is almost guaranteed, like 99.999% getting nerfed next patch in 10.4. So she is really, she's probably like my favorite pick right now. Soraka, harassment, healing, CC, she's got it all. Even with the barrier, she's still pretty tanky, and she can, even against like the Leona or Nautilus, she can survive a very long time, especially if you've just landed your Q as well. So you got that rejuvenation buff. Nami as well. Haven't seen as much Nami in solo queue as I would have thought with the buffs, but she is still incredibly potent. Yeah, she's really good at cancelling like Jhin ulti at a fairly safe range, Seraph ulti and stuff like that. So her ulti has a lot of tools there as well, and also it's a decent engage tool or disengage tool as well. So it's kind of like a cross between she's very much a cross between Soraka and Janna in that aspect. And now with her E now impacting spells as well, especially against some of those AoE ones as well. Just one charge affects the whole spell itself. So for example, if Varus does an arrow and you E the Varus, the arrow will apply the E slow and extra damage across every single champion hit by that arrow. And that will just use one charge as well. So the spell effect of the Nami E is pretty strong. Leona, as I said, and when we were talking about those number changes, yes, she's received a damage nerf. Overall, it's probably only it's still only a small percentage to damage nerf, and that's not really why you're picking Leona anyway. The amount of CC that she brings, especially with the low cooldown on her ulti, she can, even if she messes that up, she can then just re-engage a minute later and then just, you know, continue to exploit bad positioning from your squishy targets as well, and incredibly tanky as well with the W, I should add as well. Nautilus, yeah, I've been reluctant to add him up to tier 1 for quite some time. I feel like there's a couple of cheesy things coming through as well with the Nautilus Talia I've seen a couple of times as well. You might start seeing that slowly come in to your games in low ELO, Nautilus Talia. Haven't really brushed on that much, but basically it enables Nautilus to set up the Talia knockup, and Talia does so much base damage early, is ridiculous. So don't get caught up by that. If you see Talia and Nautilus in the same game, expect the Talia to be AP carry bot lane. and take accordingly. But yeah, Nautilus can set up people, burst AD carry, burst AP carry, pretty decently in lane. He did receive a visual update. I don't know. I don't think that's going to affect him at all in terms of win ratio. So he's just going to look prettier. It's going to look a prettier deep sea diver dude. Apart from that, I'm fairly confident in this tier list right now for your Sudoku games. I think the ones to watch in particular are Senna and Yumi. Those are two of the biggest ones that are like... Yumi in particular, I'm not 100% sure of tier 2 or tier 3 yet. So just play that one at your own risk. Senna is either going to be very high tier 2 or very low tier 1. Very high tier 2 or very low tier 2. I don't think she's going to brush into tier 1 just yet. I think she will probably never hit tier 1 as support because of the AD carry risk, where Riot primarily wants Senna to be a support secondary AD carry, not the other way around, and that's what they're trying to address this patch. But yeah, and another thing to factor in, play Soraka while you can, because I reckon next patch she could probably go down to tier 3, but we'll see how big the nerfs are going to be. So thank you pro players for playing Soraka top lane. Hope the 10.3 tier list helps you out in your Sudoku games for the next couple of weeks. And if anything does change, then I'll be sure to let you guys know. This is going up onto YouTube on Thursday around 3 o'clock if you did miss anything. And I'll be updating that comment, pinned comment, if there's anything dramatic there that I feel like has happened during the patch time. So yeah, hope it helps you out.